Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you. I'm Jonathan Jay. I'm an assistant professor in community health sciences at the School of Public Health. I'm excited to join you to sort of share some results from the early stages of a longer term research project around gun violence and urban heat. And so just to sort of lead things off, as I'm sure you all know, gun violence is a critical public health issue. It's the third leading cause of death for all young people ages 10 to 24, and the #1 leading cause of death for young people of color at those ages. And typically when we talk about gun violence, the majority of deaths and injuries from interpersonal violence don't come from mass shootings or school shootings, but sort of more daily interactions in settings where people have disputes with people they know, and one of them shoots the other. So in the next slide, we can see how there is a longstanding literature on how heat is associated with aggression. When people are warmer, they're more likely to act aggressively. But at the same time, we can also see how settings where more social interactions happen, because it's a nicer, warmer day, people are more likely to be outside, may lead to more conflicts, and boosted by aggression effects, we might expect more firearm violence. We're particularly attentive in this project to interest on intra-urban inequity, structural racism, and the factors that influence who is most vulnerable to urban heat. In part because as we see that gun violence in the US has increased since 2000, there's also evidence that those effects are more and more highly concentrated in the most socially disadvantaged neighborhoods. And yet both those macro level trends and the trends within cities are not well understood. So the next slide describes the methods for this early part of the work. We're using a time series design with daily observations from 2015 through 2020 in the 100 US cities with the most fatal and non-fatal gun violence incidents. We are using time series methods with distributed lag nonlinear models and meta-regression. So for those of you who know work by Gasparini, also work by Greg and Keith and colleagues at BU. These are ways of both of sort of zooming in on the effects of warmer and colder days after accounting for seasonal and longer term time trends in the data to see their effects both at the city level, and then pooling those effects in a meta-analysis to see across the board how temperature is affecting outcomes. So in the next slide, you can see what some of these results look like. We see consistently across these 100 cities that as heat goes up, as temperature goes up, shootings go up. And this holds across colder cities, warmer cities, regions. A warmer day, again, after controlling for those, so this is not just shootings are higher in the summer. Shootings are higher on warmer days in the summer. And when we do the pooling, we see that the attributable risk fraction for heat days, meaning days that are above the median temperature for a given city, this effect explains 7% of total shootings. So I would say I came to this work with the fear or suspicion that this whole story around heat and gun violence was kind of a neat story for social psychologists who think that heat, sort of interested in how people may react to different heat conditions that are easy to test in a lab. But what we found here so far is a signal that there really is something happening that explains a substantial proportion of variation at the population level. And so this is something we need to watch both as the climate changes and as we are able to zoom in to the differences within cities. So again, this is the start of a research agenda. Let me go to the next slide to make sure that we cover, we have an interest in what happens at the very highest temperatures. There's some beginnings of a signal that maybe at the most extreme high temperatures, risk declines. But we are really at the start of this process. Thank you so much. Just want to recognize our colleagues at the University of Washington and Greg and Keith at BU. And I believe my colleague Patricia Fabian is next.